Mantour Ministries presents the Mantour Guy Podcast. We may talk about football. We could mention bacon. We might reference Rocky movies. We'll probably discuss the Mantour conferences, but we'll definitely talk about how to grow in our walk with God. Here's your host, the Mantour Guy, Jamie Holden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Mantour Guy Podcast. Jamie Holden here once again, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join us this week for another exciting episode of the podcast. Well guys, in this week's podcast, we're going to be discussing what it costs to be discipled. I mean, that's right guys, just as with everything else in life, there's a cost to discipleship. Now, unlike a vacation or a trip or something like that, the road to discipleship does not cost money, but there is a price. I'm going to lay it out for you today, the price to be mentored, and then we're going to look at the price of being a mentoree. And remember, guys, every man should be mentored and be mentoring another person, so both sections apply to every man listening today. So let's start looking at cost of being a disciple. What's it going to cost you to have another man disciple you? And the first cost we're going to look at is that you're going to need to be teachable. Guys, in order to be discipled by another man, you need to be teachable. And a good example of this is found in Exodus chapter 18. Now, I'm sure most of us heard about Moses before, and the story in Exodus 18 takes place after God uses Moses to lead the people of Israel out of slavery in Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea, God rescued them from Pharaoh and his army, and now they're moving towards the land God promised them. But the nation of Israel, they struggled greatly with their newfound freedom. They'd spent their entire lives being controlled and told what to do by someone else, and they had no idea how to live free or make decisions for themselves. And because of this, they were constantly having fights and arguments and disagreements, and because they were used to having someone else tell them what to do all the time, they'd come to their new leader Moses, and they'd make him settle everything. Now you can imagine how exhausting this had to be for Moses. I mean, here he had millions of people who couldn't manage to solve even the most basic of arguments. They're always coming to him saying, Moses, fix this. But as we all know, one man can't do everything, and Moses quickly became overwhelmed. And to this point, you read in Exodus 18 that his father-in-law Jethro stepped in, and he had a heart-to-heart talk with Moses. And basically, Jethro tells Moses, listen, son, you're going to burn yourself out trying to do everything yourself. You got to get some help with all these silly cases you hear all day so you can fulfill the true call that God has in your life to lead the nation of Israel into the blessing and the promise he has for them. All right, guys. So Moses now had a choice to make. He could let his pride kick in and he could say, listen, I got this under control, or he could be a teachable man and let Jethro's wisdom and advice help him. And guys, Moses chooses to listen. He did what Jethro suggested he do. He chose leaders he set up as judges, and they heard the trivial complaints and only brought the big stuff to him. Moses shows us the need to be teachable. He listened to the advice of an older, wiser man, and because of this, he was able to be the man God called him to be. We all need to be teachable. The whole point of being mentored and discipled is to learn from other men who have experienced life difficulties so we can avoid the same difficulties because of the lessons that they share with us. However, guys, if we refuse to listen to them and learn from them, we aren't going to grow. So the first cost of being discipled is being teachable. All right, guys, the second cost goes along with the first. You need to be humble in order to be discipled. And there are two reasons you need to be humble. First, you need to be humble because it's impossible to be discipled if you think you already know everything. We just saw that Moses was capable of being taught because he was willing to be humble and say he didn't know everything. I mean, he could have said, listen, Pops, I got this. It's no big deal. I can handle it all. But where do you think this attitude would have gotten him? He would have burned out. He would have been exhausted, and he wouldn't have been able to continue doing what God called him to do. But he didn't do this because he was humble, and he realized he didn't know everything. Guys, pride can have no place in a mentor relationship. Humility is a key ingredient. And guys, the second reason we need to be humble is this. It is very tempting to let pride creep into our mentor relationship. You go from a place of struggling to make it on your own to having someone else there to help you, lead you, and guide you. You have someone else investing in you. And our enemy, Satan's going to use whatever he can to trap his men. And he's going to take a shot at you to keep you from growing spiritually through discipleship. One way he will do this is by making you feel proud. You'll start thinking thoughts like, wow, God must have huge plans for me since these men want to invest in me. Or you'll think, I must be special that they chose to invest in me. These kind of thoughts are going to creep in. You become so impressed with yourself that you'll stop seeing the need to be mentored and you'll start to think you have arrived. And guys, I know this sounds crazy, but the enemy isn't insane and he'll do whatever he can to trip us up. So in order to properly enter a discipleship relationship, you have to daily put on humility and remind yourself that you're a mess and that you need the guidance of more mature, experienced men of God to help you advance forward in your spiritual walk. All right, guys, let's look at number 3 here. The third cost of being discipled is a willingness to be transparent. Guys, discipleship only works when you're open and honest about your struggles and your issues. If you're not willing to admit you have problems or you are areas you need help with, then the process is doomed. A mentor can only help you if you're willing to be open and honest. True discipleship can only happen when we are willing to not hold back and be totally open and honest about our weaknesses and our struggles. It is a cost some refuse to pay, but guys, to be properly discipled, you have to pay this cost. You have to be willing to be open, honest, and transparent and lay everything out in your life, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But when you do that, you are on your way to the road to being discipled. And guys, the final cost of being discipled that we're going to look at before we switch gears and look at the cost of being a mentor is you have to be hungry to grow spiritually. The goal of discipleship is to grow in a deeper walk with God. So in order to achieve this goal, you have to want it. One of my favorite stories in all the Bible is the story of the losers. All right, now what exactly is the story of the losers? Where's that at in the Bible? You never heard of it before? In the book of 1 Samuel, we read that after David killed Goliath, King Saul became so outraged and jealous that he sought to kill David, who was his most faithful and powerful general. And David was forced to flee for his life. David tried to desert the Philistine army and find safety with Saul's enemies, but they wanted nothing to do with him. And unable to find any safety, David eventually took refuge in a cave in the middle of nowhere. But eventually news of David's hideout leaked out. And that's where we read this interesting passage of scripture we found in 1 Samuel 22, verse 2. It says, David escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and sisters in his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him, and he became their commander. About 400 men were with him. Guys, the same misery loves company, and these 400 men hated their lives and circumstances. Like bees to honey, these losers were attracted to David. Now the cave of Adullam was filled with not one man, but 401 men and their families. And these men didn't come to David looking for a place to wallow. They sought a leader to help them out of the mess they made with their lives. They were hungry for a new life, and they went to a man who knew had the blessing of God in his life to mentor them and show them how to live a better life than they were currently living. And David took this ragtag group of malcontents and invested his life into them. He trained them. He led them into battles, and he helped them. And in time, they became the great men in David's kingdom. They were no longer losers. As a matter of fact, 2 Samuel gives them the title David's Mighty Men and lists some of their many achievements. One of these guys fought and killed 800 Philistines in one battle. Another stood his ground when the rest of Israel retreated during the battle. It says he fought so hard that his sword froze to his hand. He single-handedly defeated the entire army while everyone else retreated. And this guy was not alone in his bravery. In another battle, another mighty man led an army to fight the Philistines. All the Israelites retreated, but he stood firm and single-handedly defeated hundreds of Philistines, and he won the battle. Other mighty men, they became skilled at defeating the giants the Philistines brought in to fight for them. One man fought a giant who had a spear. He grabbed the spear from the giant and he killed him with his own weapon. These are just some of the many daring exploits of the mighty men. These once losers, now brave warriors, were able to overcome their circumstances and through all of history become known as mighty warriors in God's kingdom. And it was all because they had a hunger to learn and grow and change, and they went and found someone to help them and show them the way. Guys, you have to have the spiritual hunger. And this hunger will cause a desire for you to be discipled by a mature brother in Christ. Guys, I encourage you to ask God to bring such a man into your life. And when he does, watch him closely. Examine his life, his behavior, his relationships. Examine everything about him. Tell God you respect this man. You want to become twice the man that he is. Glean all the knowledge you can from this man and learn from his strengths while avoiding his weaknesses. All right, guys, well, we've looked at what it costs to be mentored, but what is the price to be a mentor to another man? Well, we'll find out right after the break.
Yep. You're listening to the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Are you looking for a men's ministry resource that will teach your men the basics of what it means to be a man of God? Well, check out Mantour Ministries' book, Putting on Manhood. With 1 Corinthians 13:11 as the foundation, Putting on Manhood shows how to put your childish ways behind you and become the men that God designed for you to be. With the help of God's Word, the Holy Spirit, and a band of brothers, you can grow into true godly manhood. Order your copy today at mantourministries.com. You can start today to put on godly manhood.
Order your copy today at mantourministries.com. Follow the Mantour Guy on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks.
You already know the basics of keeping your kids safe online. Maybe you keep your computer in a public place or you check the browsing history. But did you know that 67% of kids admit to clearing their browsing history? And what about their iPod Touch or their Android tablet? At Covenant Eyes, we want to make it easy for you to protect your kids. And that's why we've created family accounts with all of the users you need and free installation on all of your family's computers, smartphones, and tablets. For a flat rate of $13.99 a month, you can give each person in your home a unique, customized internet experience by giving everyone their own username. Every username gets internet accountability, meaning everyone's browsing history will show up on their own personal accountability report. You can even add the filter to any username for free. So go ahead, start protecting your kids by knowing exactly where they go and what they do online. And we'll be here to help you along the way. So sign up today.
Sign up for Covenant Eyes using the code MANTOR at checkout and receive 1 month of free service. Visit covenanteyes.com today to sign up. And remember, 1 month of free service when you use the code MANTOR. That's MANTOUR.
Listen to the Mantour Guy Podcast on the go via Apple Podcast and Google Play. Thanks.
Hey guys, Jamie Holden here. Did you know that only 10% of churches have a healthy, thriving men's ministry? That's only 1 out of 10 churches. Well, my mission is to see this number become 100%. Join me in my work with HEUS Missions to help develop men's ministry in the local church. Become a monthly financial investor in the work God called me to do by going to mantourministries.com/partner and clicking on the Give Online button. Together, we can see God continue to move among men.
The Mantour Guy Podcast, helping men grow in their walk with God.
New from Mantour Ministries, Invincible, scaling the mountains that keep us from victory. You stayed at this mountain too long. These words spoken by God to the nation of Israel thousands of years ago still ring true for God's men today. It's not God's will for his sons to stay stagnant in their walk with God, unable to conquer the mountains that keep them trapped in their old way of life. He wants you to climb these mountains and conquer them. You can learn how in Mantour Ministries' new book, Invincible, Scaling the Mountains That Keep Us from Victory. Available today by visiting mantourministries.com. You can climb your mountains. You can claim victory. In Christ, you are invincible.
Order your copy today at mantourministries.com. Welcome back to the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Welcome back, guys. Before the break, we examined the cost of being mentored by another man. Well, now let's look at the other side of the coin. What does it cost to be a mentor? I want us to examine 5 costs in order to help another man grow into the man God destined him to be. Number 1, you need to be humble. Humility is a huge price of being a mentor. Why do I say that? Well, think about it for a moment. Look back on your life and think about a man who was a positive influence in your life. A man who invested in you, who took an interest in you and helped you and supported you. Maybe it was a father or an uncle or a sports coach or a teacher or a youth pastor. Whoever it is, this man cared about you and made a difference in your life. How many of you out can think of such a man? I'm sure you're thinking in your mind right now, a man has popped into your mind. So now you're thinking about this man, I bet you have a smile on your face and you have a sparkle in your eyes. You love and respect him and you take his word as gospel. And if I were to say something insulting or demeaning about this man right now, you would hunt me down and defend this man to the death. Now, think about how you feel about this man. As you mentor and disciple other young men, they're going to feel the exact same way about you. They're going to treat you like royalty. They're going to hang on your every word. They will admire and respect you, and God help the person who puts you down in front of them. Now, in order for you to be a successful mentor, you have got to be a humble man. You have to remember where you came from, how God changed your life, and how other men can come alongside of you and help you grow. Guys, the fact of the matter is, when you mentor people, they're going to look up to you, they're going to idolize you, and they're going to take your word as gospel. You have to constantly make sure you don't start believing their press about you. The minute you buy into the glory and the admiration that's going to naturally come your way, your effectiveness, guys, it's going to be over. Another reason you need to be humble is this. Your job is to help another man grow spiritually. Your ultimate goal should be to see them not only grow, but to outgrow you. One of my favorite quotes is, "My generation's ceiling is the next generation's floor." We should encourage the next generation to surpass us spiritually. We should never discourage them in order to promote ourselves and our interests. A real man of God hopes the next generation goes above and beyond what we're doing, and we do all that we can to help them do it. We will beam with pride when we see them conquer spiritual mountains that we were never able to conquer. And that is why you need a humble spirit. Humility is huge in order to be a mentor. The minute your eyes get off the fact of all the things God did in your life and that you can use them to help another man outgrow you spiritually, and instead you get focused on God using you as a mentor and how great you are, you're done. God can't use you because he won't share his glory with anyone. So humility is the first cost of being a mentor. But what's the second cost? Well, the second cost is the need to be vulnerable. And all God's men say, ugh. I mean, seriously, vulnerability is a tough one for us men. It almost sounds like a chick word, but trust me, it isn't. We need to be willing to be vulnerable and share our areas of ourselves that we probably would prefer no one else knows about. Guys, in order to properly mentor a man, you need to be willing to share with them not only your strengths that they can emulate, but your weaknesses that they must avoid. I'll go as far as to say it's more important to do the latter. We need to learn from each other's mistakes. If I'm driving down a road and I hit a huge pothole causing my tire to go flat, I would be sure to tell the next driver on the same road to watch out for that pothole. So why wouldn't I do the same for a guy walking down the same spiritual road? If I know that accumulating massive debt caused me to not be able to accomplish fully the mission God called me to do, why wouldn't I want another man to avoid debt so he can do what God called him to do? If I know that unresolved anger turned to rage and abuse in my life, and that severed many relationships where God set me free, why wouldn't I encourage another to resolve their issues before they end up where I went? Sure, it's embarrassing to share those areas of our past, but we're not called to live lives of prestige, comfort, and good reputation. We are called to make disciples. It's about God, not me. And out of thankfulness to God for all he set me free from, I need to be willing to be open and vulnerable and help others avoid the traps of sin that I fell into. No man should have to learn life the hard way. Why should they have to? Why should they have to experience the same hurt and pain and heartache that we've already faced when we know ways to avoid it? So we have to be willing to be vulnerable and share our weaknesses and our strengths with those that we are mentoring. All right, the third cost to being a mentor is a willingness to serve others. True discipleship stems from a servant's heart. God never called anyone to be a master. Let me say it again. God never called anyone to be a master. He called us to live a life of servanthood. We need to be willing to give of our time and our attention. Guys, I've been blessed to have men mentor me who have strong servants' hearts. My current mentor is constantly demonstrating to me what it truly means to serve. He is a man because of his position who would never have to lift a finger or lift boxes or move chairs or do anything like that. But time and time again, I have seen him do these things. I have never seen him say to someone, hey, pick this up and carry it for me. But I have many times seen him pick up something and ask somebody else, will you help me move this or carry that? He's always willing to serve. It's just an example of heart to serve to me. I am so thankful to God for the men he has used in my life to help me grow spiritually. And as I look at every one of these men, one trait I see in all of them is a heart to serve. They gave of their time and resources to serve and help me grow. And now I strive to live a life serving other men for the same goal, to see them grow. So the cost of being a disciple truly is the heart to being a servant. You have to be willing to serve and giving yourself to other people. And finally, the fourth cost we're going to look at is you need to be thick-skinned. Guys, there's a phrase that every man pursuing being a mentor needs to learn, write down, remember, never forget. And that phrase is, hurting people hurt people. Let me say that again. You need to remember this. Hurting people hurt people. If you remember these words, you can develop thick skin and you'll be a fabulous mentor. Let me explain by telling you a story from my life. When I was a teenager, guys, I was a mess. Years of pain and abuse that I stored inside of me left me an angry, moody man who regularly lashed out at people in anger. I remember one time as a teen, I had become offended by a pastor at my church who I had felt slighted me. And in my anger, I wrote him the world's nasty letter, calling into question his character, his integrity, and basically calling in his call to ministry. It was a horrible letter that I'm still very embarrassed that I wrote. But you know what? This man never responded in anger to the letter or lashed out at me or for saying what I said about him. And guys, years later, God began to work on my issues. And as he did, he reminded me of this letter, and he showed me I was not really mad at this pastor. I was really angry at God, and I took it out on his child who was serving him. And now understanding this and having been working on cleaning up my heart, I once again wrote this pastor another letter. And I apologized for the first letter from years before. And you know what? I received a very nice and generous reply saying I was forgiven years ago. This man knew that hurting people hurt people, and he saw past the attack to the pain behind it. All right, let's fast forward many years later. I am now a guy in ministry working with hurting people. And one day a guy I'm ministering to comes in and says to me, I need to ask you to forgive me for hating you. All right, I was floored. I had no idea this person was even angry with me, and here he was telling me he hated me. But he didn't stop there. He went into great detail, saying things like, I really couldn't stand you. I thought you were the worst Christian. I didn't think you had any right to be ministering to others, and I didn't want to be around you. I really, really hated you. Well, guys, I have to admit, before I said anything, I swallowed really hard. But then I remembered the letter I'd written many years ago to that pastor and the grace I had received from him, and I gave the same grace back to this young man. Because I had learned to be thick-skinned, I was able to keep my cool and respond to him in love. And as a result, we developed a relationship, and we got along better than we did before. Guys, a good mentor has to be willing to take it in the chin and then respond in love. Nowhere does Jesus command that we should turn the other cheek apply more than it does to the mentoring relationship.
The Mantour Guy's final thought.
Guys, as we wrap up, I wanted to share with you this point. We all need mentors in our lives, but we also need to be open to mentoring others. We have an entire generation of young men out there who need strong male influences in their lives. We live in fatherless culture, and there are millions of men out there who long for a man to come alongside of them and help them, who will be vulnerable with them and share their own weaknesses. They want men who are willing to sacrifice for them. They need men who are humble enough to say that they don't know everything. And the question I have for you is this: can you be that man? I encourage you to ask God to bring someone into your life that you can pour yourself into. It's your highest calling. And the question I have for you is, will you pay the price? Well, guys, we're out of time for this week. Thank you so much for being with us today. Once again, thank you for listening, for giving us your time to listen. For more information on our Mantour Conference dates and locations, visit MantourMinistries.com. For information, for resources and books and everything we have to offer, you can go to the website, visit it, check it out, our t-shirts, everything we have there. It's a great place full of resources, and we encourage you to go to MantourMinistries.com and check it out. But I wanted to end today by saying, once again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week on the Mantour Guy Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Mantour Guy Podcast. Be sure to visit MantourMinistries.com to learn more about our books, men's ministry resources, and our Mantour conferences.
One more thing before I wrap up this week, guys. You need to head to CovenantEyes.com and sign up today to protect you and your loved ones from the many traps awaiting you on the internet. You know, I am a Covenant Eyes user. I just signed my 69-year-old father up and put Covenant Eyes on his phone and his laptop. I believe in it. It's an amazing tool. It helps you stay pure online. Guys, I encourage you to try it today. If you use the code Mantour, you get 30 free days. That's 30 free days. What do you have to lose? So head to CovenantEyes.com, try it today. Like I said, what do you have to lose, guys?
The Mantour Guy Podcast, helping men grow in their walk with God.